more or less very discouraged on the dating scene in the United States. I'm
I left America because I was poor. In the Philippines, I live like a king. Can you live happily on just $1,700 a month? In the US, no. But here, in a small village in the Philippines, I don't just live. I truly feel alive again. I used to be someone always in a rush, a businessman, living on a tight schedule, always on time, always stressed. But one day, I had to give it all up. And when I arrived in the Philippines, I didn't just find a place to retire, I found myself again. This is my story, a 3 year journey in a foreign land where I learned how to smile again, thanks to the simplest people on earth. The beginning, saying goodbye to the American dream. I once believed America would be where I'd spend my old age. A small apartment, an old car, slow days watching the busy streets through the window. But then reality hit me like a cold slap. I was 67, no longer young, but still healthy, still sharp, and still craving a full life. I had $1,700 a month, my pension. For many, that might be enough, but not in San Diego. When my lease ended, I started looking for a new place. The result, a tiny studio apartment in a not so safe neighborhood, costing exactly what I received, $1,700 for a box to sleep in. I started doing the math. What about health insurance, gas, food, medicine? I wasn't living, I was surviving. I looked around. No family nearby, no one to share a warm meal with, no one to ask, "Are you doing okay?" Everyone was in a hurry, everyone was busy. Even me, once a businessman, now just an old man forgotten by the world. And that's when I realized something. The American dream was no longer for people like me. I had a long distance relationship, a woman, in the Philippines. At first, she planned to come to the US, but everything changed. Instead of welcoming her into my world, I stepped into hers. Not Manila, not a big city. I flew straight to a place called Porac, Pampanga, a small town of dusty roads and tin roofs. Not a single Westerner in sight around me. You know what? I once thought I'd die among the tall buildings of San Diego, lonely, exhausted. But it turns out my new life began on a dirt road where people greet each other with smiles, not with bills. And that's where I started to learn how to live again. Culture shock. When all plans fall apart, they often say, when you leave your comfort zone, you will discover yourself. But no one told me this. Before you discover, you will break. I didn't come to the Philippines like a tourist. I came carrying broken dreams in my luggage and a mind shaped by order. I had a plan. Of course I did. I'm a Westerner. Buy a car, do the paperwork, find a small house, set up a new life like I used to in San Diego. I thought I only needed to give commands, and everything would run like the machine I once operated. I was wrong. The first morning, I scheduled a jeepney to pick me up. I waited 15 minutes. Nothing. 30 minutes. I was irritated. 60 minutes. I was angry. How could people work like this? Why not be on time? I wanted to cancel. I wanted to scold the driver, but then he showed up, smiling warmly, and said, "Sorry, Poe. May traffic lang ho, sorry, sir. Just a bit of traffic." Suddenly, I felt my anger dissolve. No one was trying to disappoint me. Here, people don't live by the clock. They live by flexibility, by prioritizing people over time. In a world where everything I knew was about schedules, punctuality, efficiency, I suddenly fell into a rhythm that was completely the opposite. No one is in a rush, but everyone shows up when you need them. No one is on time, but they always have time to sit and have coffee with you. No one makes plans, but they're always ready to listen to the story of a lonely old foreigner. It took me nearly 5 months to crack open, 5 months to understand. They're not living wrong. I was just living too tight. I began to learn how to breathe slower, learn how to smile when running late, learn how to receive delays as a gift, time to observe, to listen, to connect. Once, I asked a Filipino friend, "Why are people not on time here?" He looked at me, winked, and smiled. "Because we are not running from anything, sir." And suddenly, I understood. While my whole life in America had been a race with no finish line, here, people live just to live. No deadlines, no KPIs, no musts, only one thing. How are we living today? The culture shock didn't come from the language or the food. It came from inside me, from the struggle between a man who needed control and a world that didn't need it. And in that breaking, I began to be healed. The Philippines, where people smile even when they have nothing. In my country, people smile after success. Here, people smile just to make it through a hard day. I used to live in a land where everything was measured by value. Success was a diploma, happiness was a paycheck, a life worth. Living meant a nice apartment, a luxury car, and a resume free of failure. And then I arrived in a place where people are poor, but not miserable. People struggle, but don't complain. People have nothing, yet somehow have everything. Porak, Pampanga, a small, dusty, unfamiliar town. No shopping malls, no Starbucks, not even a stable internet connection. But here, I found something that 70 years of life never taught me. Joy doesn't come from how much you have, but how much you share. My neighbors, they live in houses with tin roofs, sometimes queuing for water. But every morning, they smile. They greet me with broken English and a little food wrapped in banana leaves. "Sir, try this." My wife made pancit. I used to keep my distance, a bit of Western pride. But when you receive a gift from someone who has so little, yet still wants to give, your heart softens. I started sitting on the steps, watching the kids play with rubber bands and tin cans. I no longer saw poverty. I saw memory, childhood, laughter, neighborhood warmth. Things that had died inside me came back to life. One time, a storm came. Heavy rain, strong winds shaking the roofs. But instead of panic, the whole neighborhood gathered to cook, light candles, tell ghost stories. I asked, "Why are people still smiling in this moment?" An old lady, toothless, held my hand and said, "Kasi po, kung hindi tayo tatawa iiyak no lang tayo." Because if we don't laugh, we'll just end up crying, sir. In the Philippines, a smile isn't a reward. It's a survival tool, an identity, the strength of a people who have weathered storms, war, and poverty, and still sing, still dance, still believe in tomorrow. I, an American, spent my whole life trying to become someone. But here, I learned how to return to myself. No need to prove, no need to compete. Just waking up, hearing the rooster crow, and someone asking Kumusta Kana, Sir, is enough to warm the soul. I once asked myself, is this really a place to retire? Now I know the answer. This isn't just where I retire. This is where I am reborn. Rebirth. A new man at 70. When I left America, all I hoped for was peace.
One of these lunches has a peanut lover's favorite. The other has the sunflower butter you packed for your son. You do your best to help them avoid food allergens, but accidents can still happen. Xolair is an FDA-approved injection proven to significantly reduce allergic reactions from accidental food exposures. Taken once or twice a month, it focuses on the source of food allergy reactions. For adults and children as young as 1, Xolair is effective in reducing allergic reactions to a single or multiple foods.
Don't use if you're allergic to Xolair.
But then, the Philippines didn't just give me peace. It gave me a chance to start over at 70. I came here with an old body, my legs dragged with each step. My hands trembled from lingering minor strokes after years of exhaustion. My voice was hoarse, broken, like the echo of a man fading away. I didn't come here to be reborn. I just wanted to rest. But the Philippines didn't let me just rest. It made me live, truly live. I started each day by walking to the market, a habit I never had before. No cars, no supermarkets, just a pair of rubber slippers, an old cloth bag, and familiar smiles. Sir, fresh it log today. Sir, try our Bengus, just caught this morning. Food here isn't wrapped in plastic. It's still alive, fish still twitching, chickens freshly butchered, vegetables just picked from behind the house, soil still clinging to their roots. And I realized my body was healing, little by little. No more frozen food, no more fast food, microwaves, canned goods, or chemicals. I ate less, but felt better. I slept better. I no longer woke up at night in panic. I started rebuilding my house with my own hands, not to prove anything, but simply because I could. Every brick I laid, every wall I plastered, every drop of sweat was no longer torture, but proof that I was still alive. I used to think 70 was the end. Now I know 70 is just the middle. If you dare to let go and start again. No supplements, no private doctors, just fresh air, fresh food, a slower rhythm of life. And people always asking, Sir, Kumain Kanaba? Sir, have you eaten? I no longer Dal, the American businessman. I'm just Kuya Dal, Uncle Dal, the cheerful neighbor, and I like that. No expectations, no pressure, no need to prove I'm worth anything. There are afternoons when I lie on a hammock, looking up at the sky scattered between coconut leaves, and I think, if I were to die today, I wouldn't regret it, because I have lived once more, not through striving, but through stillness, through freedom. Many people think freedom means not having to work anymore. But to me, true freedom is when you are no longer haunted by the need to become someone. Back in America, I had everything a successful man was supposed to have: a sleek business card, a busy schedule, a decent bank account. But I never really felt free. I was bound by the very things I owned: car loan, an overly complicated health insurance plan, the pressure to still be useful even in retirement, and above all, I was imprisoned by my own name: businessman, the planner, the man who always knew where he was. Go in. Then I came here, a rural town, nameless on the tourist map, a place no one knows, except for those who actually live there. No one cared who I used to be. No one asked about my job, my degree, or For my pension, they only asked, "Sir, are you okay? Is your room cool enough? Do you need anything?" And in that moment, I felt released. Freedom isn't about going wherever you want. It's about not feeling pressured to go anywhere at all. Freedom isn't about dining in fancy restaurants. It's about sharing a meal with someone who truly cares about you. Freedom isn't about living in a luxury condo. It's about sleeping peacefully in a small home where you feel safe. Here, I don't need to be friends with the clock. I don't need to maintain an image. No acquaintances to impress. No one to compete with. I can wear old shirts. I can wear a straw hat to the market. I can tell silly stories in broken Tagalog mixed with English. And people still smile. Not mocking smiles, but kind, affectionate ones. I live on about $1,000 to $1,100 a month. I eat out, sometimes cook at home. I hire someone to tend the garden. I built a guest house so my son can come visit. I'm not lacking, but more importantly, I don't crave anything anymore. And that is the peak of freedom. Not when you have everything, but when you no longer feel you're missing anything. Many people ask me, "Darl, do you plan to go back to the US?" I answer honestly, I'll go to visit my grandchild. But after that, I'll come back here. Here. Because this is home. Calling the name of a new life. I didn't come to the Philippines to change the world. I came here and let this world change me. 3 years ago, I boarded a plane leaving America, not with the wings of hope, but with shoulders heavy with helplessness. I used to think, maybe I'll just live quietly until I grow old, bother no one, be bothered by no one, a soft ending in silence. But the Philippines didn't let me end. It gave me a beginning in a way I never expected. It didn't welcome me with champagne, festivals, or city lights. It welcomed me with a woven fan from a neighbor, a warm plate of rice when I had a slight fever, a child calling me Lolo Doll with eyes that felt anything but unfamiliar. I started writing a journal every day, not to document life, but to remind myself that I was still alive. I realized I was laughing more, sleeping deeper, speaking less, but meaning more. I no longer needed retirement. I was living a new life, simple, full, and at ease. Once I sat by the river in Dumaguete, watching the water drift slowly by. I thought of the old man I used to be, always rushing, always calculating, always wearing a watch like it was a shackle. And I thought, if I could meet myself at 67 again, what would I say? I'd say, just go. Leave behind everything that's draining you, because in some faraway place, strangers will make you feel alive again, and they will call forth a life you never dared to dream. If you're tired, if you feel stuck, I'm not saying you have to leave everything behind like I did, but try to listen inside yourself, just a little. Maybe you, too, need a Philippines of your own, a place not on the map, but inside your heart, where you get to be you, and at last, truly live. Freedom is a choice, not a privilege. People often think freedom is something for the young, but I've realized true freedom only comes when you dare to let go of the things that age your soul. I've lived almost a full life in a modern, developed country with every convenience imaginable. But it wasn't until I stepped out of that comfort zone into a place unknown, unfamiliar, with no conveniences, not even a shared language, that I began to truly listen. Listen to myself. I no longer ask, how many years do I have left? I now ask, how will I live each day I still have? The Philippines this didn't give me a miracle. It didn't turn me into someone else. It simply held up a mirror so I could see myself again. And then, gently, quietly, it reminded me a life worth living isn't about where we go. It's about how we live. Once we get there, if you've watched until this point, I know you're not just looking for a video. You're searching for a way of life. So leave me a comment below. Are you living or just surviving? If you could start over, where would you begin? And if you want to hear more real, ordinary, but inspiring stories about living simply, honestly, slowly, visit my channel, Expensive Expat, where I share my life in the Philippines from the perspective of a man who once thought his life was over. Don't forget to like this video. "64 years old, a Jewish American born into a middle-class family in Brooklyn, New York. My father was a watchmaker. My mother was an English teacher. They taught me that if you want a proper life, go to Manhattan, study hard, work harder, wear a suit, live high. And I did exactly that. I entered NYU, studied finance, graduated in 1982. Just when the stock market started to boom, I began from the lowest position, trainee, photocopying documents, typing spreadsheets, printing reports for the boss. Gradually, I moved up, analyst, portfolio manager, senior strategic advisor. 40 years, I lived by logic, numbers, deadlines, and sustainable growth strategies. I had everything others could only dream of. A 34th-floor apartment overlooking Central Park, a black BMW 5 Series, a pair of Italian leather shoes shiny like a mirror, a meeting calendar fully booked until next March. Every morning, I entered the elevator with men dressed exactly like me. We all held Starbucks cups, stared into our phones, and no one said hello. No one asked, "How was your day yesterday?" No one smiled, unless it was at the successful deal email. I dined alone in candlelit restaurants with 5-page French menus. The waiters knew my name, but no one knew. When my birthday was, I had no wife, no children, only a sister, Emily, the only person who ever asked me, "Ben, are you happy?" I never knew how to answer that. Instead, I measured life by bank balances, S&P 500 charts, and quarterly profit performance. Every day, I woke up at 5 a.m., ran exactly for kilometers, ate oats, read 3 financial newspapers, and arrived at the office before 7. At night, I came home, drank a glass of whiskey, listened to an instrumental piece, and slept with the sound of the air conditioner. I used to think, this is living. I used to believe that success was living, that the less you depend on others, the less emotions you have, the less you love, the stronger you are, that a real man should not care about weak things like loneliness. But slowly everything changed. I stopped feeling excited when my account increased. I didn't feel happy with promotions. I lost appetite, even while sitting in front of the finest delicacies. One day, I looked in the mirror and saw myself smiling, but I couldn't remember why. That smile was empty. I thought it was stress. I thought just a few days off, some spa, and reading would fix it. I tried. It didn't. I tried meditation. I tried listening to inspiring podcasts. I tried changing my office chair, breakfast menu, even my whiskey brand. But inside I was still empty. Everything I touched no longer touched me back. One evening, I stood on my 34th floor balcony, looking down. At the avenue, lines of cars, the lights like shattered diamonds. I suddenly thought, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? I didn't think about suicide. I honestly, just wanted to feel something, even sadness. Even pain, as long as it's real. I had gone so far, so long, I couldn't even hear the voice in my head anymore. And that's when I started to doubt. Maybe in all those 40 years, I never really lived. And then, within exactly 72 hours, everything I had clung to collapsed like a glass tower. 3 days after my 64th birthday, I received two messages. The first message came at 6:14 a.m. from a hospital in Boston. Brief, emotionless, classic American style. Miss Emily Cohen passed away at 3:27 a.m. We are sorry for your loss. Emily, my sister, the only one who knew I liked peanut butter sandwiches and slept on my left side. She died in a car accident on her way home from a night shift at the hospital. No goodbye, no last message, no chance for me to say sorry for not coming home last Christmas. I sat frozen in a kitchen full of stainless steel and granite countertops. As cold as my face, a cup of cold espresso sat still on the table. No one hugged me. No one said, "Are you okay?" I said nothing either, just sat there like a peeling statue. The second message came that same day at 3:50 p.m. from the HR office. We regret to inform you your position as senior strategic advisor will be eliminated due to restructuring. I had served that company for 27 years, signed countless contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but now they just needed me to leave, along with a support package of 3 free therapy sessions and a good luck on follow. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because that's all that was left on my birthday. One message about death, one message about losing my job, and a luxury apartment full of lights that could no longer warm anything inside me. That night, I didn't cook. I didn't turn on the lights either. I just turned on the TV and let the news channel run. Didn't remember the content. Didn't care who the anchor was. Everything passed by like wind on glass. Near midnight, I opened my laptop, aimless. The introduction of Duo Directory brings full identity provider functionality into that same secure foundation Duo was famous for. Simpler and more secure from the start with Duo. Near midnight, I opened my laptop, aimless. Didn't Google anything. Didn't go on social media. I just opened a blank Word file. Fingers falling over the keyboard. Couldn't type a single line. I didn't know who I was. Didn't know what I wanted to say. Didn't know what I had left to lose. I pulled the curtain. Stood still by the window, staring down at Madison Avenue. The cars still rushed by in the night, as indifferent as this city itself. Across the street, one apartment still had lights on. A couple having dinner, I guessed, to figures facing each other, not looking at each other. And then I saw myself in them. I saw myself in every brilliant city light that didn't lead anywhere. I saw the years I had lived, full of schedules but soulless. I saw a man who had everything except himself. I didn't cry. I just stood there, as if standing long enough might change something. But no miracle came. And that was the moment I understood. This apartment is not a home. This career is not a life. And the name Benjamin Cohen is now just a faded business card. The next morning, I still woke up as usual. But instead of putting on a suit, I just sat quietly, opened YouTube, and absent-mindedly clicked a video that changed everything asterisk the next morning. I woke up at 6 a.m., not because of an alarm clock, but because there was no reason to stay in bed. The apartment was still eerily quiet. I turned on the automatic coffee machine, the first sound after a long night, repeating like every day. no one to sit beside. And me, still sitting there, in front of the computer screen. I didn't plan to do anything. Just open YouTube out of unconscious habit. I wasn't searching for the meaning of life. Didn't type how to overcome loss. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe just a bit of noise to silence the voice in my head for a while. YouTube's algorithm displayed a few thumbnails. One of them was an image of an old man with white hair, sitting on a wooden chair under coconut trees. Behind him, the blue sea. The title was simple: Why I Left Australia After 70 Years. I didn't know why I clicked it. Maybe because he looked straight at the camera. No acting, no effects, just a man with eyes that had once been tired, but now at peace. He started telling his story. I used to be an engineer. I used to think everything could be calculated with logic, until my wife passed away, and I began to ask, what am I living for? I stopped sipping my coffee. For the first time in months, I sat upright, not because he was like me, but because he said something I had never dared to admit. I didn't come here to relax. He continued. I came to see if my heart could still feel. I laughed. Then I cried, uncontrollably. Tears fell on the keyboard like breaking down the wall I had built around myself for years. I didn't know if I was crying for Emily, for myself, or for the things I had never allowed myself to feel. I watched the whole video, only 9 minutes, but it felt like a 9-year journey inside. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt real. I clicked into his channel. A series of videos appeared. His life in a place called Signature, Philippines. I had never heard of that name before. I used to think the Philippines was just storms, beaches, and tropical chaos. But in the videos he filmed, everything was so gentle. A man wearing a straw hat, old lady selling mangoes, smiling at every customer, children running barefoot in the rain, and no one shouting, "Be careful." People lived, but not in a hurry. I started to search. Philippines for retirees, cost of living in Dumaguete, visa for senior expats, internet speed in provincial towns, healthcare for foreigners. I typed like my life depended on the results of those keywords, and maybe it really did. I discovered a community of foreigners living in Dumaguete, a seaside town on Negroes Island. People from the UK, Canada, the US, Germany, some young, some old, and they all had one thing in common. They had lost something, then found themselves again there. I read a comment under one of the videos. I didn't come to the Philippines to escape. I came to find the part of me that Western society made me forget. That sentence cut through the fog in my heart like a knife, deep and clear. For the first time in a long time, I felt curious, a feeling that seemed so simple. But for me, it was a sign that my heart wasn't dead yet. I opened a new word file. Asterisk typed the first sentence in nearly 2 years. If there's a place in this world that can make me smile again, maybe it's the Philippines. I didn't decide to leave right away, but what was certain was,
I've spent my life
but what was certain was, the old life was no longer home, and the door had just opened, though still far ahead. After 3 sleepless nights, I woke up earlier than usual. This time not for the office, not for a Zoom meeting either. I made an espresso like always, but didn't drink it. I just looked at it, silently, as if saying goodbye to an old version of myself. Then I opened the desk drawer, where I used to keep the things I couldn't let go of. An old Rolex watch I bought when I got promoted, a pair of gold cufflinks my mother gave me when I turned 30. A Mont Blanc fountain pen, never used, but always carried to look professional. I looked at them all, took a deep breath, then picked up my phone, took photos of each item, and posted them on a classified site, selling watch, pen, furniture, clearing out before moving. No explanation. That afternoon, I called a real estate agent. His voice was surprised when he heard me say, I want to sell this apartment. This week, if possible. Are you sure? This is a Central Park View unit. You know that, right? I simply replied, I used to think that view was happiness, but it turns out it was just a pretty picture hanging in front of an empty life. I sold the apartment for nearly $2 million United States dollars. I didn't wear a suit to the final contract signing. I wore a cotton t-shirt, jeans, sneakers, things I once considered improper. But for the first time, I felt light, like I had taken off the metal armor I wore for 40 years. I also sold the BMW. I sorted my belongings into 3 groups. What to keep? A laptop, a notebook, a photo of Emily. What to give away? Books, kitchenware, expensive suits. What to throw away? The feeling of having to prove myself every day. I packed into a small rolling suitcase. Not much, just enough for 2 weeks of minimalist living. Then I opened my browser and booked a one-way ticket. New York gives, Manila gives, do again. 18 hours of flying to connecting stops, 1 bus ride, 1 unfamiliar step. Friends, the ones who used to raise whiskey glasses with me every month, started calling. Ben, what's going on with you? The Philippines? It's poor there. Are you having a breakdown or running away? I didn't answer because I knew none of them had ever woken up with a heart cold as stone and a cup of tasteless espresso like I had. None of them had ever lived so quietly that when they cried, only the floor tiles could hear it. I wasn't running away. I was searching for something I didn't even know the name of. All I knew was, it wasn't in New York anymore. On my last night in the old apartment, I stood on the balcony, Central Park still shimmering under the city lights. A dreamlike scene, but this time, I didn't see it as a trophy. I simply said, thank you for giving me a dream, but now, I need to wake up. When the plane landed in Manila, the first thing I felt wasn't the sun or the heat. It was the scent of something very alive, very real, and completely new. Asterisk, the flight from New York to Manila lasted nearly 18 hours. But I didn't feel tired. No sleep, no movies, no books. I just sat, looking out the window, as if I wanted to remember every moment of leaving the old world. The watch on my wrist showed a new time zone, but time no longer felt like a taskmaster. No more meetings, no more reports, no where I had to be. For the first time in 40 years, I had no schedule. The plane landed at Ninoy Aquino Airport. The doors opened. A wave of hot and humid air embraced me. Not like the cold air conditioning back at JFK. This was real heat, carrying dust, laughter, voices, street vendors' calls, and a smell that was very strange. Not fragrant, not foul, just alive. I took a deep breath. The smell of fish, sauce, charcoal stoves, and streets after the rain. Not fancy, not clean, but strangely, I felt light. I walked out of the terminal. No one waiting, no name sign. Just hundreds of people, waiting, walking, selling. A little boy selling. Candy stopped in front of me, saying nothing. I reached for my wallet, but he just looked at me, eyes bright and real. No begging, no pressure to buy, just looking, then smiling. I smiled back, and in that moment, I didn't feel like a stranger anymore. I found a small eatery before my connecting trip to Dumaguete. Not an American-style restaurant, just a street-side spot a few plastic tables, an open fire, and an old woman cooking. No menu, no prices, just one question in broken English: rice or noodles? Sir, I sat down. Hot rice with fried egg, chili sauce, and a cup of melting ice water.
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash.
In a cloudy plastic cup. Altogether 40 pesos, less than $1, but it felt like the first real meal of my life. They called me sir, but not in the distant, polite way of the West. It was respectful, yet warm. Here, they didn't know I used to be a financial advisor, attending meetings in Manhattan's tallest buildings. They just saw an old foreign man eating eggs and smiling alone, and that was enough. I looked around, children playing ball near the parking lot, women wrapping food, jeepney drivers napping. In their cabs, none of them were rich, but no one looked as exhausted as the people I used to see on Wall Street. I ordered another cup of iced black coffee, bitter, strong, no sugar, but real. The next flight brought me to Dubai at sunset, a small plane, flying low. So I could clearly see the coconut trees, red tin roofs, and ocean glowing orange. Not paradise like in toys and ads, but real life, rough, but beating, as the plane touched down. I didn't know why tears started to fall. Not from emotion, not from fear, but because I could finally breathe. A breath without deadlines, without KPIs, without emails to reply to. I stepped off the plane. No jet bridges, no modern gates, just a small concrete path, and sunlight touching my skin like a gentle touch from Mother Nature. A young man, around 30, wearing a t-shirt, riding a tricycle, waved at me. Sir, need a ride? I nodded. He didn't wear a uniform, no fancy watch, but he softly sang a Tagalog song as he drove. And I, instead of asking for Wi-Fi, just wanted to ask, do you feel peace living this way? We got lost, but then that wrong turn led me exactly to where I had always been looking for, a small house by the sea, with blue water, salty breeze, and a hand-painted sign, for rent, 3,000 pesos, month. The tricycle drove me away from Dumaguete Airport under a deep red sunset. Wind rushed into my face like washing away the dust of the past. The driver didn't ask where I was from, what I did for a living, or how much money I had. He just glanced at me in the mirror and smiled. Is this your first time here, sir? I nodded. The wind took away my reply. I gave him the address of the guest house I had booked. But just 15 minutes later, he turned down a small road, took a wrong turn, and that wrong turn led me exactly where I needed to be, a red dirt road, running along the coast, lined with coconut trees and simple wooden homes. We drove a few more minutes before I signaled to stop. Right in front of me, unannounced, was a small bamboo house, faded white paint, red tin roof, and an old wooden sign hanging by a rope, for rent minus 3,000 pesos, month. Underneath was a scribbled line with a marker, quiet place, nice breeze, 2 beds, sea view. Not the guest house I had booked, not part of the plan. But in that moment, I knew I had found something you can't search for on Google. I stepped off the tricycle, pulled my suitcase close. The house stood just 30 steps from the water's edge, waves gently lapping, rhythmic like breathing. I knocked, 3 soft taps. Not sure if anyone was inside. A small elderly woman, wrinkled like old rice paper, opened the door. She wore a faded floral shirt, silver hair tied neatly with a piece of cloth. You want to see? She asked. I nodded. She led me through a small yard with pots of basil and a lemon tree. The house was single-story, wooden floor, bamboo roof, to small bedrooms. A kitchen with a mini gas stove and a slowly spinning ceiling fan. No aircon, no TV, no bathtub, but there was a wooden window opening straight to the sea. I looked out through that window, then turned to her. It's been empty for 3 months, she said, but maybe it's waiting for the right person. I didn't bargain, didn't ask further, didn't ask for more time to think. I just said, yes, I'll take it. I'll move in now. She smiled, her wrinkled hand gently patting my suitcase, like saying, welcome home, old soul. That afternoon, I opened my suitcase and took out the first 3 things: a photo of Emily, a notebook, and a pen. I sat on the old wooden floor, leaned against the wall, listened to the waves, the salt in the air, and the breath of a world that doesn't ask you to prove anything. Before dark, I wrote the first line in the notebook. I don't know how long I'll stay here, but I know, for the first time in 64 years, I don't want to leave. First night in Duigent, no streetlights, no car horns, no alarm clocks, only the sound of waves, insects, and my own voice. Finally, hearing my heart, asterisk I used to think I had forgotten how to sleep. For the last 12 years in New York, I had a ritual as repetitive as religion. 1 light sleeping pill, 1 glass of water set beside. One glass of water set beside the bed. A brainwave playlist at 430 to heads playing softly. Blackout curtains fully drawn. Eye mask on, breathing by count, and hoping for just one night, not waking up at 3 a.m. from an unnamed worry. But the first night in Duigent, none of that. No pills, no music, no premium memory foam pillow. Just a creaky wooden bed, a slow-turning ceiling fan, and a thin curtain swaying in the sea breeze. The darkness here wasn't the kind from skyscrapers, cold and artificial. It was real darkness, like an embrace from nature, soft and full of trust. The sound of waves crashing outside the window, not loud, not angry, just like a mother's weary lullaby. I lay on my left side, just like when I was a child. The smell of the sea breeze drifted through, not like artificial essential oils from a diffuser, but the real smell of seaweed, of salt, of damp earth, and of life. I closed my eyes. Didn't think about unread emails. Didn't think about payroll, about meetings, about to-dos. I didn't think at all. And it was in that moment of not trying to sleep that I slept. A sleep that came unannounced, without resistance, without preparation. It came like an old friend who had forgiven me, gently placed a hand on my forehead and said, sleep now. Then, everything is okay. I didn't dream of money, didn't dream of those glaring red numbers on stock screens. I dreamed a strange and simple dream. I was sitting in a field, looking at the sky. Beside me was Emily, my sister, the one I lost. She didn't say anything, just placed her hand over mine, and I cried, right in the dream. The next morning, when sunlight streamed through the bamboo blinds, I woke up. I didn't jump out of bed. I didn't reach for my phone. I just lay still and realized, for the first time in over a decade, I had slept through the night. No pills, no forcing, no fear. I stepped out to the porch, holding a warm glass of water, barefoot touching dew-soaked ground in front of me, blue sea, blue sky, and a new world calling my name. I exhaled, long, deep, truly, and whispered, if just for a night like that, this whole journey was already worth it. That morning, I didn't need to know what day it was. I no longer lived by calendar. I lived by light, by breeze, and by a gentle voice inside that said, Ben, today let's just live gently, shall we? I woke up not because of an alarm, not because of noise, but because of light. Light slipping through the bamboo slats of the window, gentle like a good morning from the universe. Not harsh, not demanding, just softly waking me, like someone placing a hand on my shoulder and smiling. Then, today is such a beautiful day. I sat up, my head light as cotton, my heart no longer heavy like stone. I stepped outside, for the first time not wearing a dress shirt or slacks, just an old white t-shirt and a pair of soft fabric shorts. No need for a tie to feel like a man, just me. I walked along the coastal path, fine sand, waves gently licking at my feet. The locals had already begun their day. No alarms needed, because they lived close to nature's rhythm. A group of children played soccer right on the sand, their laughter echoing into the sky. An old woman sat picking vegetables at her doorstep, looked up, smiled at me. A smile with no reason. A man biking with baskets of fresh fish waved, "Good morning, sir, sir." I heard that word often in New York, but never with a smile. I stopped by a roadside store. Just a few plastic chairs, a red gas stove, and a steaming pot of something. An older woman with a scarf on her head looked at me with warm eyes. She spoke slowly, her English tinged with Tagalog. "Want breakfast? I have fish porridge, good for the heart." I laughed, not sure if good for the heart meant for health or for feelings, but I nodded right away. I sat at the plastic table. In front of me a bowl of hot fish porridge, slices of ginger, green, onions, and a small banana on the side. No menu, no Western dishes, no fancy names like comfort bowl or detox meal. Just porridge, in every sense of the word. But as I lifted the first spoonful to my mouth, tears almost fell. It was warm, it was rich, it was alive, like the feeling, finally, I'm being cared for. When I finished, I opened my wallet, but she just waved her hand. 60 pesos only. Trust is waved her hand. 60 pesos only. You're welcome here anytime. I wasn't used to kindness with no conditions. In New York, everything had a price. But here, it seemed the most valuable thing was presence. I asked for the way to the beach. A newspaper boy volunteered to walk me, didn't ask for money, didn't beg for anything, just let me. Named a few types of fish caught this morning, then nodded goodbye. I sat on an old wooden bench facing the sea. In front of me, the sun was rising, not rushed, not showy, each shimmer on the water, as if the sky was smiling too. And in that very moment, I knew I didn't need to know what day it was, didn't need to know if the bank sent a report, didn't need to check email, didn't need to return to orbit, because for the first time, I stepped out of the clock and stepped into life. A few days later, I got used to the rhythm of life. Here, what I didn't expect, in a cafe with no Wi-Fi, I would find what I've been chasing all my life. Real connection, no network required. Asterisk 3 days after moving to Dumaguete, I started forming a new routine. Morning walks along the beach, reading on the porch at noon, and in the afternoon, finding a small cafe, not the type with air conditioning, jazz music, and baristas in black aprons like in New York, but wooden huts, built temporarily by the roadside, with handwritten signs, sometimes misspelled, coffee, cold or hot. We have bread, I passed, by a place called Calma Cafe, Calma meaning calm in Tagalog. No lead signs, no music, just a wooden board hanging by coconut rope. No Wi-Fi, talk to people. I laughed. I had lived in a world where 1 minute without Wi-Fi was a nightmare, but this time, it was that very line that made me step inside, only for tables. A wooden shelf with some old books, an old man reading a newspaper, a young woman writing something in her notebook, and the man behind the counter, a Filipino, around his 50s, salt and pepper hair, rolled up shirt sleeves, worn apron, black coffee. He asked, without needing to check a menu. I nodded, sat at the table near a wooden window opening to a row of coconut trees. 5 minutes later, he brought out a black coffee in a rough terracotta cup. No sugar, no milk, no decor. It's bitter, but honest, he said. Sitting down across from me, I looked up, slightly surprised. In the US, staff don't sit with customers, but here, he was the owner and the first person to talk to me with genuine sincerity. My name is Domingo. He said, I used to be an accountant. Then I decided to stop. I smiled. I used to be a financial advisor and also decided to stop. We looked at each other. No need to explain, like two soldiers who survived different wars, yet understood. Domingo told me his story of leaving Manila, quitting his high-paying job. After a minor heart attack that woke him up, he told it gently, without pity, without drama, just like someone who had walked through a storm and now sits in the sun. I told him about New York, about my sister, Emily, about the day I stood on the 34th floor balcony and asked myself, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? Domingo didn't say, I'm sorry for your loss. He just placed his hand on the table, near mine, and said, if you need someone to be silent with, I'm here every afternoon. We sat like that for almost an hour. No phones, no emails, no internet, just two human beings, strangers, but not distant, sharing the gentle silence of a sunny afternoon. When I got up, he simply said, today's coffee is free, because today you chose to talk instead of scroll. I left the cafe, didn't save the location, didn't take a check-in photo, but my heart had saved it like a milestone. I began returning to Calma Cafe every afternoon, not for the coffee, but because, for the first time, I had a friend who didn't need to know who I used to be. I didn't plan how long I'd stay in Dumaguete. At first, I thought a few weeks, but one morning, when I opened my notebook, a thought passed through. What if I started over here? Not retire, not hide, but truly live again. I took out my laptop, opened the file begin underscore again. DocX that I had typed on my first day in Manila. The blank page was still there, silent like it was waiting for my hand. And for the first time in over 10 years, I wrote, not a report, not an email, but truth. I am Benjamin, 64 years old. I used to deal with things single reason to smile. Now I am here, where there's nothing except my own heart. I wrote every day, morning, after coffee with Domingo, afternoon. Afternoon, after a walk by the shore. Evening, under the yellow light, with the sound of the sea as background music. I didn't write to publish, didn't write to inspire. I wrote because I needed to know I still existed. Each paragraph I wrote was like small pieces slowly rebuilding the puzzle of my life. For the first time with true colors, no edits, no filters, I wrote about Emily. The things I never said to her, wrote about my parents, and how it felt the first time I left home at 18, wrote about myself, not Benjamin, the financial advisor, but Ben, the man who once feared sleeping alone. Writing was how I heard my voice again, not through a microphone, not on Zoom, but from within. Domingo read a few parts. He didn't judge. He just said, keep going, every line you write. is one step back to yourself. I also started trying things I used to think were nonsense. Meditating 10 minutes each morning, cooking my own lunch, learning to make chicken adobo, the first Filipino dish I burnt, sketching on coconut shells, practicing ukulele with the neighbor kids, writing a journal with no dates, because here, every day is worth remembering. One afternoon, while I was writing, a little boy came up and asked, "Uncle Ben, why do you write every day?" I thought for a moment, then said, "Because I forgot who I was, and now I'm trying to remember." He nodded thoughtfully, then sat beside me, drawing stick figures in the sand. We didn't say anything more, but I knew, maybe for the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely when writing. One day, Domingo brought me a letter, not from a bank or a bill, but an invitation